So I know for the longest time, there's been a lot of people asking me to do more Fate and FGO content over here on the Bleach Hub channel, because there's really not a whole lot of people that power scale Fate. Like, most of the people that do are in some weird hidey holes in like internet caves, and they never come out and share the scaling and whatnot. I'm like one of the only people that openly talks about Fate. And then even when you get people that talk about Fate, most of the common consensus is like, okay, they're like a little fast, like maybe they're faster than sound, and maybe they could do some big boy damage with their city level noble phantasms, but nah, not me. I'm here to give you the raw, real scaling and tell you what I think is possible for a lot of these characters. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about Saber Alter. Now, the plan for the Fate characters on this channel, just to kind of give you guys a heads up, is that I'm currently rereading a lot of FGO just to kind of get back on track with the new Lost Belts and stuff coming out. So my plan is to kind of cover a lot of the notable characters as I reread through the series. So obviously, with Fuyuki being the first major story arc in FGO, we're going to start off by talking about Saber Alter, then we'll move on to Orleans. We'll probably do a video for Jean, one for Jalter, maybe one for Lancelot. I haven't really decided yet, but that's going to be the general direction that these videos go in. If you want to see these videos made with any regularity, show your support by leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment down below, because I really like doing these Fate videos. I just need to see them get the same level of support as some of the other videos, which I know is kind of hard because, again, we predominantly talk about Bleach over here. But hey, if the Yu-Gi-Oh videos can do pretty well, I don't see why these Fate videos can't do very well either. So show your support by doing those following things. Also, if you watch the video and maybe you're a little confused or you have some questions about the video, my Discord's also linked down in the description down below. You can usually come find me in there and we can have a nice little chat about anything that you might be confused on, because it is Fate and I'm going to be trying to condense this as easily as I possibly can. So I might gloss over things, or I might not go in enough detail because I'm trying to not have this be like an hour-and-a-half video. So with all that being said, you guys should know how we do things over here on the Bleach Hub channel. We're going to go over Salter's strength, speed, and abilities. Then I might give some closing thoughts at the end, and then we can all go about our weekend. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into this video, starting off with how strong Saber Alter is. Now, Saber Alter actually has a pretty good amount of showings when it comes for her own AP and her own internal scaling. And I mean, no matter what series she's in, she's always looking like a top tier threat. I mean, even in the original visual novel, she pretty much just ran a train on anybody she was fighting up against. I mean, Heracles was pretty much considered to be the strongest heroic spirit in the war. I mean, you don't really count Gilgamesh because he's not technically a part of it, but he was basically the guy to beat, especially with someone like Ilya as his master, who essentially had infinite mana at her disposal. He was truly like a fearsome opponent to beat. And I don't know if you've seen the Heaven's Feel movie or you've read the visual novel, but Saber Alter kinda spanks Herc 10 ways to Sunday. Like, it's not even a close fight. And there's truly not anybody that can actually contest Saber Alter in the original Heaven's Feel route, and this does carry over to things like the Fuyuki Grail War in Fate Grand Order, where Saber Alter is the first person to start the Grail War back up again, and she pretty much bodies everybody. The only people that were left alive was Kucaster, but as we now know in Lost Belt 6, Kucaster's kind of insane. I won't spoil for any NA players that maybe don't know, but he's kind of a big deal. And then there's Heracles, who is basically only alive on one life in the middle of nowhere. Saber Alter pretty much beat him to a pulp and left him barely alive. So whenever she appears, she's a top tier threat, and this even carries into her interludes as well, as she has two notable fights in her interludes. The first is against John Alter, where she pretty much beats up John Alter, which is kind of a big deal because John Alter is the next big boss after Saber Alter, and Saber Alter being able to beat her is very impressive, especially because someone like Jalter, as we'll talk about later, is a living concept, and to defeat Jalter, you have to permanently destroy said concept, otherwise she'll just keep regenerating. And then in the next interlude, she fights and beats Altera, which is very impressive because if you've done anything in regards to Fate Extra or Fate Extella, you would know that Altera's kind of a big bingus. Like, she's really strong. Being the white titan that essentially the moon still had to lock away because it fears just being completely obliterated by it. And again, even at that point, the White Titan's power was fractioned between like the large Altera and the small Altera. She's really not someone to be messing around with, especially because Altera throughout the entirety of Fate Extella is beating up people like Nero and Tamamo with just the utmost casualty, keeping in mind that Nero and Tamamo have the Moon Crux, which gives them the entire power of the Moon Cell. They are quite literally just BB from CCC, except now it's Nero and Tamamo. She's able to contest people like that. She even fights Gilgamesh to a standstill, which is rather impressive, although Gilgamesh was winning that fight initially, and Hakunon did have to intervene to help Altera out a little bit, but her merits do speak for herself, as she is not someone to be taken lightly, and Saber Alter kind of calls her trash, and says the only thing that Altera has worth of note is the Sword of Mars, and then she just proceeds to beat up Altera and then leave. So no matter which way you want to slice it, Saber Alter's got some very strong scaling internally, and then beating someone like Altera, who scales to Moon Cell tier characters, is absolutely insane, because even if you're not someone who's antiquated with all the Fate lore and all the mumbo jumbo, surely you do know that the Moon Cell is absolutely OP. With at the absolute low end, it's capable of creating universal sized reality marbles, and more of the mid-range, it's able to manipulate the infinite multiverse. As we know in the Fate series, there are an infinite amount of timelines, and the Moon Cell is able to oversee and rewrite all of those. And then at the absolute high end, you have just the outerversal 1A scaling, which basically means it's beyond all infinite dimensions by surpassing them by another larger quantification, because the Moon Cell has areas that are beyond the concepts of space and time. So it looks pretty good for Saber Alter, and really, you can scale her to whichever one you want, depending on what you want to argue her as. If you're feeling like lowballing her, you can say, well, the Moon Cell is able to make some universal-sized reality marbles. She beat up Altera quite handily. Altera is such a strong force that the Moon Cell feared her, split her in half, and tried to seal one of her halves away, and that ultimately didn't work because Altera is a menace to society. Or we can say that the Moon Cell can rewrite an infinite amount of timelines, which would be a 5D feat if you're counting dimensions. And again, Altera scales to that said Moon Cell, and let's remember that Saber Alter did beat the tar out of Altera. Or we could just go with the 1A stuff, and we could talk about the dark side of the moon, which has areas beyond the concepts of space and time. There's also other things you could use to more justify the higher end arguments if you want, say the Moon Cell having a connection to the root because it has to summon the heroic spirits from the Throne of Heroes, which is in the root being a place that sits atop the theory of dimensions, being a 1A space. This is also kind of confirmed in Kara no Kyokai. If you don't know what that is, it's the series with Shiki. Basically, at the very end, we get stuff with Zelrish talking to Shiki, talking about the root, above all concepts, above all dimensions, all that kind of gibberish stuff. Not as important, you can just use it as more supplementary evidence. There's more you could argue as well to cement them further into, say, multiversal or outerversal, but I feel like this is just a fine enough argument to make. It's also pretty blatant. Fate is not like, say, Dragon Ball, Bleach, or Naruto, where things can get pretty vague and you can argue back and forth. It's just very blatant that this is the lore of the series. And the reason you see people kind of just downplay them to multiversal is, truthfully, they just don't do as well against other high-end 1A characters that get into absolute numpty nonsense. So that's generally why you see people downplay them to multiversal, but they can get higher. It just kind of depends on the argument you choose to use for whatever debate you're having, but those are the possible tiers. Speed is also pretty easy to argue for Saber Alter, because at the very beginning of FGO, they basically just say anybody worth their salt, anybody that can move their legs around and can walk, and any of these singularities is going to have immeasurable speed. Why is that the case? Well, we learned that all of the singularities, which are pretty much just the mission stages that you and your different servants go to basically progress the plot, we learned that all of these places are outside the normal temporal axis, which is literally a feat for immeasurable speed. Not to mention that characters can also time travel with their spiritrons. You also have characters like Tamamo that Altera scales to, who literally just ran back in time with her sheer speed. We don't need to mention stuff like that, or say the servants that are capable of summoning themselves into these singularities, like in the final singularity Solomon. We don't need to talk about that because they pretty much just blatantly set it up at the very beginning. All of the other stuff I mentioned is stuff you could use as supplementary evidence for speed. Now, if you've never heard the term immeasurable speed before, I'll just break it down in a brief and concise way. Basically, you start off with any finite speed. Let's say you move at Mach 1 or 50 miles per hour, 100 times the speed of light, anything that you can quantify with a number. You eventually just keep going up and up and up and up and up until you finally reach infinite speed, which is where you finally have an infinite value, right? That is your values that you're infinitely fast. But then you could take it a step further with inaccessible speed. Inaccessible speed basically deals with inaccessible cardinals and is the idea of, say, infinity plus 1, infinity squared by infinity, right? It just bridges the gap between infinite speed and immeasurable speed, because immeasurable speed is now when you actually can't even use any amount of infinity mumbo jumbo to quantify the amount of speed that you're at, because you're now beyond the entire speed formula entirely. Speed, time, distance, they don't matter to you anymore. And immeasurable speed is where these fate characters are sitting because they can move outside the normal temporal axis and also have the ability to travel through time. But then what can Saber Alter actually do? Is she a strong servant? Can she do anything kind of cool with her abilities? And I'll say yes and no. As a servant, she has some default properties like being able to fight conceptual beings. Like I mentioned earlier, Saber Alter blatantly fights and beats Jean Alter, who exists as a concept that if you do not destroy her concept, she will continue to regenerate. So not only can she fight concepts, but she can actually kill them. But this is further backed up by the fact of the demon god pillars that Solomon commands, or should I say Goetia commands, as these are also said to be conceptual beings in Goetia's bio. So we know that servants can fight concepts, but they also have some odd soul abilities, as servants can use souls to fuel their own energy. Not that Saber Alter needs it, because Saber Alter just kind of intrinsically has an infinite amount of mana as she's born of the Grail. So she doesn't really need to do that, but you could use it as like an offensive thing where you could just kind of yeet your opponent's soul out and use that for your own energy, which does allow her to bypass conventional durability. So say you're arguing that, I don't know, for whatever reason, Saber Alter is city level because of the Excalibur calculations, and she's fighting someone that's like city plus, she could just remove their soul, consume it for power, and then that person would be dead because they obviously are now lacking a soul. Saber Alter also has the unique ability to convert her enemies that she kills into her minions. She converts them into shadow servants. As Ku Caster tells us this when we get to Fuyuki, we're kind of asking, why are these other servants like blackened? Like, why are they not normal? And Ku Caster tells us that whenever Saber Alter defeats somebody, they're converted into her goons, kind of like loyal zombies, if you want to look at it that way. Loyal magical zombies, if that's the interpretation you want to go with. This isn't necessarily good for one-on-ones, because instead of converting them, you could probably just kill them normally, but this is very good for group battles where it might be Saber Alter versus a group of enemies, or Saber Alter and some of her goons versus another group of enemy and their goons. It means anytime Saber Alter beats somebody, she's inherently going to be going +1 every time she fights them, and she should always have the advantage. So that's quite a good ability. As far as her skills and equipment and NP goes, they're all essentially just there to facilitate her being a big beat stick. She has Mana Burst, which buffs all of her stats, which is very good, and she can spam it. That's kind of all it does. It just makes her a big beat stick. She has a Charisma, but it's not very good. Charisma usually is emotional manipulation, but because hers is ranked E, I mean, she has it, just not a very good version of it. It really shouldn't be coming up in any debates. She has her Instinct, which is essentially precognition. It'll essentially function as Spidey Sense in the most basic form, in that it'll warn Saber Alter whenever there's danger around, or, hey, this attack coming towards you, that's particularly dangerous, you should probably dodge that one. So things you might think are obvious, but again, if you've ever read a Spider-Man comic, or seen Artoria fight, especially in the visual novel, you would know that while it is pretty obvious that your instinct is trying to help you, both characters kind of tend to avoid their instinct or spidey sense sometimes. So Saber Alter, being a bit more rational, quote unquote, does have a bit of a better instinct than say Artoria does, because Artoria tends to think too much when she's given advice, or tends to misinterpret the information she's given. Saber Alter tends to have more of like a Mordred-esque instinct where it's very blunt, straightforward, and very helpful for her, especially given her personality. So she does have a more useful precog, is basically what I'm getting at. Then some like side note things. These are more just trait-based things that might help Saber Alter out in very niche battles, or they might be a detriment to her. And the first one is that she is technically a dragon, as Artoria in Fate is basically born of the power of a dragon, and Saber Alter retains that same ability. So that may be good if she's fighting someone that has a demerit against dragons, but very bad if she's fighting someone like, say, Siegfried or Sigurd, who do exceptionally well against dragons. Her sword, Excalibur Morgan, is also said to have the properties of both a good and bad sword, meaning it has both evil and holy properties. Which, again, shouldn't come up all that often, but it can still be pretty useful if, say, you're fighting some undead person who's weak to holy weapons, or maybe you're fighting a goody two-shoes that is particularly weak to evil weapons. It lets her at least have that kind of good matchup, but again, I don't think that's going to be coming up all that often. Then it's just kind of a final note here at the very end. I did just want to note that Saber Alter does get stronger as she fights, as she does note that once she beats Jalter, she does get stronger. And then she even mentions after she beats Altera that her Noble Phantasm got stronger as well, so she is a servant that gets continually stronger as she fights, and it is a notable buff. But then also, she does lose ultimately in Fuyuki to the combo of Mash blocking Excalibur Morgan, and then Ku throwing a big wooden man at her and just blowing her up. The thing of note here is, again, 1, Ku Caster is kind of crazy as we found out in Lost Belt 6, and then 2, she actually says that she held back because of Mash's Noble Phantasm. Now, again, if you're not up to date, the reason she would do that is because Mash's weapon, her shield, the Noble Phantasm she wields, is Galahad's weapon, and in lore, Galahad is basically always like the pristine, perfect, pure knight. And he's the one that always finds the Holy Grail and all that good stuff. So that's why Saber Alter was a little intrigued that someone had Galahad's weapon. You know, I would think that'd be a little intriguing as well. It's almost like the reaction a lot of people have when Artoria pulls out Excalibur, except imagine if some random person you have no idea who they are pulled out Excalibur. You'd be like, that's a little sussy. I don't really know what's going on here, but I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. So, should be noted that Saber Alter did hold back, particularly in that fight, because Mash had Galahad's weapon. This is very notable because Saber Alter says like 700 billion times in her other fights and in her bio that she has no need to hold back and that she does not hold back. So if you're using a debate with Saber Alter and someone's like, well, is she bloodlusted? Is she going to do that? Yes, she's like always raring to go. She's always ready to absolutely annihilate somebody. We only have this one case where she particularly holds back because someone has one of her knight's Noble Phantasms, and it's literally some random pink-haired girl. Now, with all that being said, that is all I have to say for Saber Alter. If you enjoyed, again, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment on your thoughts in the comments down below. Again, if this video just does decent and I see a little bit of support for it, then I will gladly make the John Alter video. I just need to see that you guys are interested in the Fate content, which I know there's you guys out there, because I always get questions in live streams and I get comments every now and then, even some pings in Discord sometime about people being like, bro, where's the Fate content? Here's the Fate content, all right? Here's the Saber Alter video. Do your best to just show support for it, and I'll make the John Alter video, all right? So all I'm asking is for some support, and I'll gladly make it, because as you guys know, your boy likes John Alter just a little bit. Again, like I said at the very beginning, if you have any questions or you just kind of want to talk about the video, feel free to hop in my Discord. That's going to be linked down in the description down below. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace, late guys.